Weird. All right, everybody, we are back another week with Talks with Alex. And this week I've called it an international edition. I believe one time before I brought a number of my friends from around the world when the when this pandemic first started. And so I brought one of my friends from China that lives in China that went with me to Howard. I brought one of my friends from Nigeria, and I brought one of my friends from South Africa on, and we all discussed what was going on as far as COVID was concerned around the world. I decided to do another show today that had an international focus because last week we had a discussion about the African diaspora, and so I was just like diaspora, or I might be saying it wrong or whatever. Anyway, so we were having a discussion, and one of the things that they told me was that they feel like African Americans don't really know how to hold on 1 second, because I think I'm feedbacking. One of the things that I want to try to make sure that I did was have a discussion around how our community here in America, African American communities, run parallel to other African communities, and so that we can kind of draw those connections, because as a whole, I think that Americans are really focused on what's happening with us, and sometimes we don't really pay attention to what's happening around the world. All right. So I brought on four special guests. I think that they're gonna. I'm excited about having them all on. I just want to preface this that I look up to every last one of these people that are on this show. I follow all of their careers. They're doing amazing things. So I think that you're going to get a lot out of this conversation. I definitely need to say this. Make sure you share the link. Go ahead and comment if you have something that you want to ask to the panel. And I'm going to start introducing every last one of them. And so the first person I'm going to introduce is somebody that I see usually on almost a daily or a weekly basis because we kind of work together. But we do the great work of being advocates. And he does a lot more of it than I do. I do a lot of background stuff, but he's like on the front lines. And so his name is Macdonald Taylor. Mac is a paralegal graduate of Delaware County Community College. He's a victim advocate who is passionate about reentry in the community. All right. The next person that I definitely want to introduce is a really good friend of mine. I'm sorry. This is a guy that I actually met while I was on the campaign trail, and I went to an event, and he was talking about his experience as far as criminal justice was concerned. And so ever since then, I've just been an avid follower of his career, because I appreciate people who speak honestly and speak truth to power. Mr. Bill Cobb is the founder of Redeem, a nonprofit working to eliminate systemic discrimination aimed at people living with arrests and convictions. He is the principal of Cobblestone Solutions and 1619 PAC. Bill previously led the largest campaign in the ACLU's 100-plus year history as the National Deputy Director of the Campaign for Smart Justice. He currently serves on the boards of Community Legal Services and Philadelphia Legal Assistance. Bill resides in Philadelphia, PA, with his wife and children. All right. The next person that I want to introduce is one of my really, really, really good friends. I was talking to you about the international show that we did, and I felt that it was very important for us to look at the perspective of people who actually live in Nigeria and who have been kind of reporting on this work. So I invited my great friend, Biodun. Biodun, who is popularly known as B Diesel, broke onto the Nigerian media and entertainment scene in 2015 and has since registered himself as one of the most talented hosts and event compares in Nigeria. His versatility and excellent delivery as a TV host, presenter, MC, and business executive earned him the nickname Diesel in some entertainment and corporate circles. As an influencer, Diesel has worked with a handful of brands across industries in Nigeria to help drive campaigns and brand messages to their target audiences. As a presenter, he works with the Accelerate TV as a host of Accelerate News. Every Monday, as a business consultant, he works with Andela. He attended the University of, I always mess up this name, Maiduguri, Nigeria, where he graduated with a degree in business management and then went on to complete his MSc program in media and communications from Pan Atlantic University, parent institution of Lagos Business School in 2016. All right. The last person that I'm going to introduce, and then I'm going to let the rest of the people introduce themselves, is Mr. Malik Boyd. Now, let me tell y'all something about Mr. Malik Boyd, because I mean, I have been following this man's career for a very, very long time. He does really big things, and so the fact that he's on this show is huge to me. Okay, so he is the CEO of Brand Marketing, host of Heart City TV, and activist and father. He's no stranger to service to the community. Malik is the former president of the Philadelphia Young Democrats, former candidate for PA state representative, and has sat on numerous boards of organizations that impact our city. His board positions have included such service-oriented organizations such as Allen's Lane Arts Center, Nationalities Services Center, and Youth Services, Inc., a recipient of the Liberty Bell and Lucian Blackwell Guiding Light Award. Because of his ability to show pragmatic leadership and balanced vision, Malik has served as the president of the Republican Voters League and currently serves as the chairman of the Political Action Committee for the Black Republican Ward Leaders Caucus. With a passion for youth and mentorship, Malik is also the founder of and president of Mentors, a nonprofit organization that serves to positively impact the lives of at-risk male youth through financial literacy, job training, and mentorship. Okay? Now, last but not least, and I'm sorry, because I forgot that I just got what I needed. I'm going to introduce my mentor's partner, okay? My mentor is the reason why I'm here in Philadelphia and the reason why I have been doing all of these things here, all right? So this is Miss Buki Domingos, is a versatile singer, songwriter, instrumentalist, nurse in Germany, and California activist and motivational speaker with over 2 decades of stage experience. Buki has an album, To God in Prayer, and a single, A Better World and Trust, several music projects and productions throughout Africa, Europe, and USA. Buki has toured Europe and West Africa with several celebrities like Sir Elton John and African megastars like Angelique Kidjo. Buki is a co-host of a radio show and podcast. Okay, so all these people have done really great things. You all got that now. So now I'm gonna bring them all on, and we're gonna have a conversation about what I want to talk about finally, and that is about this shooting that just happened and what's going on in Nigeria. All right, so bring everybody in. How are you all doing? All right.
Good.
Peace and love. Sweet, man. Thanks for all that.
I think one of the big things, Alex, is that you talked about being a fan of everybody here, which I think we all are honored to be here. But we're fans of you too, bro. Like, you putting this together is a big deal, and we honor your voice for that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. All right. So look, we have these 2 crazy things happening at one time, right? Let's start with Nigeria. COVID-19 has created the perfect storm for protests and movements to happen, right? I've noticed that in Nigeria is a big oil producing country. It's very wealthy and oil rich. The problem is that they're seeing extremely low prices in oil right now, and so there's a lot of unemployed happening. I believe men from 15 to 34 are unemployed in that country. And so this created the perfect storm for riots and protests to break out. There's been looting, there's been all different types of things happening in that country. So if one of either Buki or Biodun can give me a Diesel, can give me some background on what's been going on, that would be great. Because I'm probably just giving you like the oversight of it all. But can you give me some like background of what's actually happening in Nigeria?
I'll let Buki go.
I'll let you go first because I guess you just came back from home like a few weeks ago.
Sure. Thanks, Buki. So what we're experiencing in Nigeria right now is pent-up frustration from several undelivered promises, several failed, initiatives that were supposed to lift the youth from, a position of financial, frustration to economic prosperity, right? And like you mentioned, we are an economy that is supposed to be rich in oil, but the people are not reaping the benefits of, this gift that has been given to us on a natural platter of gold. We hear about a lot of money that is coming from this part of the economy that is being poured into, several state efforts, several state allocations, several initiatives that are just supposed to help the youth help the youth feel like they are a part of this country and they are reaping the benefits of being, members of an oil producing nation. But that is not happening. Now, to top that all up, you are increasing the price of, the pump price of petrol. I mean, it's one thing for us to have access to oil, but we do not have, refineries that, give us this final product. So yes, we do produce oil, but we ship to the foreign world to have it refined, and then it's imported back to us. And so during the course of the lockdown, we experienced a period where the pump price of petrol was reduced, and then overnight it was increased. And people are just like asking, like, you don't do stuff like this. You're not communicating with the people. You're not giving them a reason to feel like this initiative or this price hike that you're doing is going to feed back into their pockets. And on top of that, you have a security system that is supposed to be catering to the safety of the people now becoming the bone in the side of everybody, frustrating people. So what we're experiencing right now is a accumulation of all of these frustrations. And like I said, COVID, the lockdown has provided a natural habitat for protests to brew. And I guess the straw broke the camel's back, and now everybody took to the streets and they were just like, you know what, enough is enough. We just want good governance. And that was all triggered by the recent increase in police brutality.
I hear you. So then let me just toss it back to, I'll toss it out to either Mac, Malik, or Bill Cobb. And so we can give a little background of what's happened here in Philadelphia, okay? And so I know that Malik has been going to a lot of the things that have been surrounding this whole shooting and everything like that. So what's happening on the ground, Malik?
A lot of things. So I literally just left Christian Compassion to come here for the stream tonight. A lot of emotion. Obviously, Walter Wallace was shot down multiple times by two officers. The video, and I'll give my own personal interpretation of it. The video was two officers that were not trained clearly to handle Walter in any way, shape, or form. One of the officers looked visibly fearful from the very beginning. So most of us, and I know Bill will jump on this as well, I mean, most of us that are on the block, you could tell something was going to happen from the moment this video took off, and who was going to initiate it. The bigger conversation goes to work that Bill is doing, and I'm sure that Mac is doing as well, and Alex, that you've been speaking up about. We still have residue inside of our system that allows for some of the same systemic issues to persist, despite the promises. Biodun just talked about that. You said several promises. I'm sure if Cobb pulled out a list just on social justice, criminal justice issues alone, it would be beyond several that Black Americans are still waiting for. I celebrate, quite frankly, what you were able to accomplish in Nigeria in terms of addressing SARS, because we get empty promises, a couple of slogans for us to go out and vote the same people back in who say that they're going to go fight for us. And the cycle happens year after year after year with very slow incremental changes. And so we find ourselves honestly in a very sister-like situation with you at this very moment. And it also brings up a bigger question for those who are still finding out who they are and where they're from. Because there's a conversation with Black America that we got to have about our brother and sister relationship, right? Like, so now that we're all on the same page, look, Bill just threw it up, right? It's time for all of us. And I'll never forget doing an event with the Made Man organization, and they did it at the Ghanaian embassy in DC, and the heads of state came together and literally said to Black Americans, we apologize for not keeping the bridge open. But starting today, dual citizenship in Ghana. I mean, they started listing all of the ways that they wanted to open those doors up. And I think, Alex, this can't be understated at all. The effort that you're talking about tonight in bridging these conversations is going to help Black Americans, specifically those that are right here in Philadelphia, to understand that we're all in the same gang. To use a hip hop reference, we're all in this together. What's happening to Nigeria is happening to brothers right here in the States. And tonight and every day moving forward, we should be figuring out ways to support each other, not just on social media, but now it's a money game. And I think Bill can talk about this from a national level. If we're not putting money behind these marches, behind these demonstrations, it doesn't matter. Money moves the dial. And so when something happens in Nigeria, Black Americans have to put our money up and say, yo, those are our brothers and sisters, hands off, or it's a problem. And vice versa, right? So there's an opportunity for us to grow. And I'll let Bill take it from there.
Yeah, I was going to go ahead and toss it to Bill and Buki because they both are out here doing the social justice work and advocacy that I'm talking about. Bill here in the state of Pennsylvania and Buki in San Diego, California. So, I mean, can we move forward inside that conversation where we're talking about advocacy and the things that are happening behind the scenes that surround these types of issues? Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, thank you for that. So what we have is a global problem. Imperialism is the root cause of state-sanctioned policing, brutalizing communities, whether we're talking about Nigeria or America or in Belarus. And so for me, I've been working internationally with colleagues in Ghana and Bobby Wine's election in Uganda, and working with people in cannabis, and I'm driving political outcomes now. So the root cause of it, we must remember, is that imperialism is where we dominate people and land, take its resources and its people, and then take a fraction of those individuals, hire them as state-sanctioned officers, and those citizens turn into the police, and then they drive the will of the 1% who are driving all of the economies across all of the continents. Mm-hmm. And so for me, I've learned to look at the issue from its root cause, to tackle it globally, and to work with partners who are willing to just dismantle police departments, defund police departments. In America, there's a big conversation about, do we defund the police? Do we abolish the police? In America, there are over 2,000 criminal justice systems, and every single community has defined how they're going to keep the public safe and how they're going to respond to things that happen to people who hurt one another. Policing is not the answer. It is what was implemented by individuals who wanted to enslave and control and dominate others. And we are still using it, hoping that it'll transform or turn into something that'll be beneficial for people. Wow. But its origin was rooted in controlling individuals. It is still very much there, as it is now tied to financial markets all across the globe, as it is hunting. Their goal is to hunt, capture, and kill people, and to drive them into economies that are based off of the Quaker system of incarceration, which is now turned into a global economy. And so we are up against culture, we are up against imperialism, and we are up against woeful ignorance and separation of individuals who are still being harmed by the same group of individuals, leveraging the same tactics and strategies, without us having a mindfulness or references of history, one another, and our capacity to drive change while working among each other.
So it's interesting that you bring history and how things like this started, because SARS, I believe, and I'm going to toss it to Buki when I kind of give this thing, it was started as a group to help protect citizens. And so, unfortunately, in America, that's not how our police departments were started. It was started to return slaves. But we see how these types of community organizations can kind of try to evolve into these monsters. And so, Buki, can you help us kind of draw the connections between the policing systems that we have in our countries?
So that is a beautiful question. I'm glad I got that question. And while Bill was talking, I was literally connecting the dots in my head, looking at the police force in the US and San Diego that I know all too well, and the police force in Nigeria that I also know all too well, because I was born and raised up till my 17th life in Nigeria. And I did live in another African country right after, and it was just not the same. Connecting SARS. True, it was started to protect Nigerians, or on the outside, so it seemed, But the police force in the US and the police force in Nigeria, this is what they have in common. Police force in the US was put in place to put the African American slaves in check, put them in their place. And this perpetuates slavery. Mm-hmm. The police force in law enforcement in Nigeria was put in to protect Nigerians, or so we seem. But the truth is, this is also a perpetuation of colonialism, which is also put there by those that came to obtain, before we got independence in our country in 1960, to put Nigerians in their place. And if you look at the history, the connection with the police force and law enforcement, we have the special Israeli forces that do something in common. They train police officers in San Diego. We know for a fact because we're able to trace them, especially after Floyd, to places like the Mesa Police Department, and that's factual information. And I looked it up. I remember my childhood, my dad talking about being trained by these special Israeli forces, and they needed how to do XYZ. The last time they were flaunting pictures online about Israeli special forces training Nigerian law enforcement was in 2018. This is not that long ago. Hence, we see things like the knee restraints that was used on George Floyd on the streets in Nigeria. This everybody must die. This irrational use of force, overuse of force. This is definitely what the Nigerian police have in common with the US police. So this is where I like to connect the dots. And when Nigerians we saw this also in South Africa with the apartheid movement, and how peaceful protesters were just executed. And we're seeing this now, even with the uprising in La Mesa. I remember you talking earlier about just Nigeria saying that they had 100 people being killed because they opened fire. The truth is, no Nigerian authority will ever give you the accurate number of bodies that were collected that day. I know that a relative of mine lives in Benin City, and I know that the protesters went to the jail there and freed the prisoners. I believe it was a week and a half ago. And this was part of the uprising because the system is also constructed in such a way that it is a way to just house people that they feel are degenerates and do not belong in that community. And here in the US, we see that the people they choose to be degenerates are the Black and brown folks. So this is definitely what the police forces have in common. Mm-hmm. It's that for Africa, you have the colonial masters, and here you have the slave masters. But either way, you have forces from the outside that are trying to continuously put a certain people in check. And that is the issue. And one more thing, in the 80s, I remember distinctly, in some part of the 90s, there was a lot of crime. There was a lot of armed robbery in Nigeria. And the biggest issue with the armed robbery in Nigeria is most of these people were actually getting their ammunition from the police. I remember distinctly because how they prosecute criminals in Nigeria is the death penalty. And they do it through firing squads. So you have the national news at, NTA at 8 p.m. And you have the people lined up. That was my childhood, on national news. And you hear the command saying open fire, and they literally lined these people up and they were executed on national TV. And this was an education to tell people, if you commit armed robbery, this is what you do. But the issues with the police partnering up with these crimes, we also see the connections here in the US with weapons and ammunitions, and how sheriffs are involved in selling ammunitions underground and dealing in illegal activities. But here, our DA system is really slick in sweeping stuff like that under the rug, especially in cities like San Diego. So for me, that is the connection.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm going to spin it and I'm going to toss it at Mac, because Mac does a lot of advocacy work. And I mean, you're talking about the legal system and how it responds to a lot of these things. And so I wanted to give Mac an opportunity to kind of jump in and give us his feelings on what's going on. Go ahead, Mac.
So let me give this disclaimer before I begin. In school, I was taught that you have to take the facts and marry it with the law. And that's how you come up with a legal conclusion. So with that being said, first I'm going to give respect to Mr. Wallace's family, because no parent should have to go through that. What I can't do is, I seen a video, I don't know which video I seen, but I had to stop watching it because we have a tendency, it's one thing to say, yo, we got to stop this black on black crime. But we forget that is a victim. We shouldn't be sharing the video in the manner that we do. And my problem is, yes, as a black man with kids, you know, as I prepare them to learn how to drive, I have to teach them how to be pulled over while being black. That's a reality. I have to do that. Make sure your hands are up. Keep your license and your insurance and your registration right there in arm's reach, so you don't have to go digging in your pocket or nothing. That's a reality. The problem I have is that we want the laws to change. We want this stuff to stop. But we won't take time to even go vote so that we can put people in there that can help change these laws. Now, people say my vote doesn't count. I disagree with that. And here's what I say. To me, the most important election is not whether Trump or Biden wins. That's not it. It's the city council. It's in Pennsylvania, judges are elected. District attorneys are elected. And guess what? If we don't vote, we can't serve on jury. So how people that look like us, that get caught up in the system, how do they get to be judged by a jury of their peers if we're not voting and we can't be in that jury pool? That's factual. Now, we have to talk, let's talk about the police. I watched some of the news reports that came out today. And Danielle Outlaw said, they didn't have tasers, we can't afford it. I don't understand that. It shouldn't be an option that we can't afford it. That's not an answer. Because had they had tasers, we may not be having this conversation about Mr. Wallace. You know, and what type of training are they getting? Are they getting 8 hours of mental health training at the academy? Is that sufficient to be able to have them do that? To be able to when they get called to a situation, and they knew because they had multiple calls about the house. My understanding was 2 or 3 calls prior to that last call. So what type of data are they using? And this is the point when I'm talking to young people. Listen, do I think the system is corrupt? Yes. Main reason. Prime example, in Philadelphia, for at least, and keep me honest, at least for the last 7 years, every year, the Inquirer does a good job of talking about police overtime. So let's talk about that. You have a cop that works 11 to 7. If he arrests 3 people, statistically, each one of those arrests is 10 hours of overtime just in court appearances. So you have cops that have a base salary of $50,000, $60,000, and that are tripling it just in overtime. So yeah, they got it. They're incentivized to lock people up because that's going to put more money in their pocket. Now, I'm not saying all cops are bad, but police officers shouldn't be incentivized to lock people up.
Yeah, let me just toss this back at you, because I mean, we're having this conversation, and so I think that the politicians in Nigeria, and I'm just going to kind of try to bring in some parallels, okay? The politicians in Nigeria have been talking about taking time to make some improvements to the SARS. They've gone back and forth where they're saying they're going to abolish it, and then they've gone to the side of saying they're going to improve it. I mean, I feel like American police are at a more advanced form of the SARS, okay? Where they've become a lot more sophisticated in the way that they do things and in the goals that they have, okay? When we have a conversation, I mean, I think when you have conversations around voting and people having control of who their political leaders are, I mean, I think that takes it into a completely different conversation with which I'm completely okay to have, because, you know, I have very strong opinions about our political system here in the United States. But I mean, I'm not sure that the parallel, and so I think I'm going to bounce it back to Buki or Biodun or even Malik, what the political system looks like there, what those improvements to the SARS looks like, and then we can have a larger conversation about what it looks like to properly police, or what it looks like not to police, or it looks like of having something completely different, because there has been societies where there are no formal police systems that function. But I mean, like for me, I mean, I'm going to a long explanation, but I'm gonna take it back to the original question. For me, it's just kind of difficult because I've been trained to believe that there are very bad people in this world. And I have to understand, like, is it a issue of trauma or poverty, or is it an issue of maybe mental health issues that need to be dealt with and corrected? Like, what are causing people to feel like they need protection from other people who live in communities like them? Because I think that's what pushed a lot of African Americans to want the crime bill. That's what pushed Nigerians to want to create SARS. So what are we looking at as political systems, and how are we looking at to improve it? And then let's have a conversation around policing, and if that's something that's really needed. Is that okay with you all? So we're gonna push it to whoever wants to jump out there and kind of make a comparison between our political system and the things that they're looking to improve between America and Nigeria. Who wants to ever take on that? Whoever can. And I'll just toss it out.
Say one thing real quick. What's the one common factor in the two, but the political and policing? It's money. You know, listen, you can't tell me that we can put a man on the moon and we can go in the middle of the night and find a hill that got a bunker in it and kill Osama bin Laden, but we can't stop the flow of guns and drugs into America. So let's just say if America got rid of drugs, the hardest hit system financially is the criminal justice system. You don't need as many prisons. You don't need as many cops. You don't need as many judges. You don't need as many lawyers. You don't need the contractors to build the prison. So there's no incentive for any nation to get rid of crime. That's factual.
Not crime, but how they respond to it in regards to capital.
Correcting me, Bill. Now, I know I'm probably the oldest one here, but you know, if you go back and you think about when Chrysler was going to go under, and Iacocca called Ronald Reagan, said, "We're going out of business." Ronald Reagan said, "No, we can't afford to pay all that money in unemployment." It's the same concept. Can you imagine if there was no drugs in America? There was no drugs.
No, I think Matt's response was the perfect segue into that larger thing. It is, again, it's imperialism, it's capitalism, it's the economy, and we have a booming economy. So in my work, I've elevated to the point where I'm not engaged on the ground or in the service provider space anymore. I've been working with government and institutional leaders to literally defund police, to literally abolish police departments. And again, the solutions are not one size fit all, but every community needs to do something to divest from actually policing. Like we need police to become gardeners. We need to take guns away. But you have to remember, I think all of us, we are hurting ourselves. We are tricking ourselves if we are not really focused on the fact that this institution is a hyper-corrupt institution whose only mission is to protect the resources and where they are currently gathered and where they are held and who disperses. And that is it. That's the only reason for policing. Like in policing doesn't stop or doesn't protect. Typically, we know that well-served communities have very low needs to actually have police in them. In Black and brown communities across the world, we know that police never come until after something has happened. And so they only come to be punitive. They don't come to be restorative. They don't come to fix. They don't come to heal. They don't come to mend. And so we must have the conversation about, as humans, how we want to respond to one another when we harm one another. But we must abolish the thought that hurting each other is a solution for building humanity and for saving the planet. Like our responsibility is to love one another and to take care of the planet. Every other thing is a system that's imposed upon us by a government or by another group of people aiming to control. So I have a very hard, visceral, emotional, and seismic reaction to people believing that policing is an answer to improving the quality of life. I think that policing has made the world exceptionally dangerous and is one of the reasons and why we are still such a brutal and crass group of people.
So I'm going to connect the dots between the political situation in the U.S. and Nigeria. They're two very different ball games. One country claims to have a democratic process that works, but still has with their election system, for example, the presidential election, where the majority vote is not enough to elect the president. The other one is straight up, they're struggling with their democracy. Let's put it that way. They've been at least through several dictatorships, especially in the 90s. It was really hot then, where you literally had a few months in between dictatorships. That's two different things. But then when we talk about law enforcement and abolishing law enforcement, I have to respond this way. This planet and world as we know it, this system as we know it, was built by certain people to function in a certain way. Let us assume that what happened in France with the French Revolution happens again. Everything will collapse, and the most people that will suffer will continue to be the most impoverished. What other organizers are starting to do or have been doing for a few years is they're taking it a level higher. Like I am part of the World March of Women, though not a very active member, but the few trainings and meetings that I had several years ago in Philadelphia speaks of a just transition. And then folks started to conflate that with just labor and work and survival. But the truth is, for any system to be dismantled, it has to happen systemically. It has to happen strategically. The people, especially the black and brown impoverished folks, need a way. They need another alternative and another option. What San Diego, for example, has been doing regarding law enforcement, because there are different models of abolishing the police. Some people talk about defunding the police, as in reallocating funding to more social workers, to more psychologists, to more caregivers, to more healthcare professionals, mental health care professionals. So my point here is abolishing the police is great, but just stop and think about it for a second. If the police was really abolished today, there will be complete, utter chaos. What San Diego did, for example, with the County Board of Supervisors several months ago was to champion 3 measures. And one of the measures was the medical care response team for those that are mentally ill. That simply meant that when somebody's having a mental health breakdown and a lay person calls 911, this person is not shooting anyone. They don't have a weapon. They're just whatever, high as a kite and out of their minds. The police do not go. You have unarmed mental health care professionals that show up instead. So these are certain ways that we can start to divest the police, so remove the funding from the police department and allot those funds to healthcare professionals, especially mental health care practitioners, because we see that in our communities of color, that's the biggest issue. And also decriminalizing things like homelessness or unemployment. So I believe that really need to work on the just transition and not just saying, basta, let's break everything down, let's destroy everything down. Because there's an African saying that goes, when the elephants are fighting, it's the grass that suffers. So we also have to keep that.
And so, I mean, it's good that you bring up that point. And I would definitely like to hear Malik's point of view of this, because he comes from, you come from the Republican point of view. And so, and I mean, I'd be curious to hear like how you feel about these conversations that are happening, because sometimes I feel like I And sometimes I think the communication between the two parties sometimes is kind of conflated and then turned into these random memes, and then certain words are kind of pushed out there in the media to kind of demonize the other side. But I'll be curious to hear what you think about this conversation that we're having surrounding policing.
So I want to just adjust that comment a little bit. Yes, registered as a Republican, but I come from the side of my people.
Oh, absolutely.
So,
yeah.
You know, I served on the Young Dems. In fact, I just got off of a call with the vice chair of the DNC, even now, because the goal is about our people winning. And I think some of the mentality and where we have gone wrong as a people, we do not look at politics as a business. It is a business, the end. It's not emotional. They allow us to get caught up in those memes, to your point, Alex, and we get locked into sharing these memes about this person and that person. We spend 8 months talking about memes and not policy that Bill is pushing, not policy that Mac is advocating for, not the stuff that Buki is working on or Biodun. We're lost in whether Biden's laptop, is going to release something, or whether, Trump's tax returns. It doesn't matter because it's a business. And we are the largest shareholders in the largest corporation in the world, the United States of America. It has a DUNS number. It is a business. And the feds do business with the states. The states do business with the local municipalities. That's why all of them have a credit rating. We stay in this Carl Thomas sense of being all emotional about any of that. And that's why we don't get the ball forward. So look at Maynard Jackson and what he was able to do in Atlanta. He said very clearly, look, if I don't have 30% minority participation, these planes, they're going to land on dirt roads. But nothing's moving until minorities are in position. Unfortunately, we get caught up in the hype. Somebody gives a great speech. They're a great orator. It feels good. Book bag drives and haircut. I could care less. Make me prosperous and I'll buy my own stuff for my kid. I don't need you giving me handouts. So we get this sense of socialism that gets passed as a mask of democracy, and it's not. It's really not. And so they get mad at me for this, but this is what it is. And so if we all got together and said, all right, what Bill and Mac are pushing, we're going to put all our money behind that, and it's got to get done. I just said this now. We have 11 out of 17 city council folk that are black and brown. And one of them is the council president. You mean to tell me we can't get the police addressed? That's absolutely insane. In fact, we should be saying, listen, y'all can't show up at another city council session until y'all address police brutality. Well, let me see you come up on the fourth floor.
We had a black mayor, a black governor. We've been black and we've been Democrat. I'm 50 years old. I've resided in Philadelphia my whole life. There is, I'm glad that you actually framed the question that way, Alex, because I knew how Malik was going to respond. So thank you for delivering that softball. I don't like the first time I've ever heard anything about Malik's political affiliation outside of what I previously knew was this year. Doesn't matter to me. What matters is his heart, his character, the outcomes of his leadership. Has absolutely nothing to do with the business of politics that too many of us have failed to make any investment in. I have voter profiles on both phones. I can go through it and I can see who is civically engaged through voting, who isn't civically engaged through voting. And people spend a great deal more time engaged in frivolous activity that does not produce a greater quality of life, does not share the resources of time and money, and doesn't come together to think and to consider and to love one another and to bring ourselves up, our vibration, our collective vibration, and then our collective energy. And so I'm grateful for Malik playing whatever side he's playing on. I know that the brother loves us. I know that he's working hard to deliver outcomes. He's committed to doing that. And that's all that's really relevant among those of us who know better. For me, I'm engaged in politics 24 hours, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And and I've been doing this for 20 years. People should take note of expertise and should consider it rather than pay attention to noise, because we are losing. And we are not losing because of what people are doing to us. We are losing because of what we are not manifesting that's in us to actually produce for the world.
Here's an interesting thing. If I can tag on to that really quickly, Alex, I feel like Saturday morning wrestling. I feel his hand in the ring. I'm about to tag in. You know, one of our problems is that because of that lack of business, we become that end product that we just talked about. We become that end user in the system, right? First of all, we're dealing with a fiat dollar, right? So you got to understand how the dollar is created. It's a debt instrument. There's 4 hierarchies of money. It's created at the banking level, and it's created based on the amount of debt that we sign up for, which is why mortgage-backed securities were traded to China and other entities. So when you realize they're making our labor based on thin air and then putting a sheet of paper with red and blue fibers on it and then having some private entity charge us for that, you understand why the police force will never be dismantled, because then you totally tear up a capitalist society. But if you understand that police protect profit, that's it. Because Walter Wallace would not have happened if he was a white man in Chestnut Hill. Absolutely not. He could have tore up that whole Starbucks. They'd have been like, "Oh, that's Walter. Let's just get him in a straight jacket and let's get him where the help that he needs." But because they look at that's this part of the city versus that part of the city, the response was immediately different. How they pulled up on the block was immediately different. And they knew I could let off 12 shots because as long as my camera was on and he was walking towards me, I could say he posed a threat. The end. FOP 5 comes and swoops in with a couple of dollars and the deal is done. And so all I'm saying tonight is, unless we're putting money up behind those demands, there's this saying, power concedes to nothing without demand. I don't believe that it ends there. Power concedes to nothing without demand and consequence. If there's no consequence, it's not moving.
Well, let me ask you a question, because I mean, we're having this power concedes to demand. I mean, I know that in Nigeria, they've been kind of the response has been the rebellion. I hate to say riots. I hate to focus on looting, because I feel like in America, when somebody doesn't do something that someone else is, somebody could slap you in the face, and if you yell back at them, they can say, "Oh, you responded back to me in the wrong way, so now you're wrong too." And that's kind of what we do in America. That's how conversations happen. If somebody else does something quote unquote wrong, it justifies things being done wrong to them. And so this whole concept around rioting and looting, they're not protesting correctly, so now we're not obligated to do anything wrong. And you constantly hear these types of things out here coming from elected officials and other people, when at the end of the day, the problem is that you continue to kill people who do not deserve to lose their lives. And as you're around here parading, crying about stuff being taken from a store that can easily be replaced by someone who has insurance and money, we're talking about somebody lost their life, somebody has lost their child, and you try to compare those two things and say it's justified. Or you shoot off 12 bullets when this man only had a knife in his hand. Or you send 5 police officers when the call was made and it was said on the police phone call that this person was having an issue mental health wise, and it didn't necessarily need police. Or when you have one mental health person in the department and that person just so happens to be off duty in a city that has almost 1.5 million people in the first place. But I digress, right? So we're talking about what is the proper way to make some of these things happen. And I liked how Buki was saying that you have to look at it incrementally. Now, the radical that I am, I feel like shit needs to happen now. I'm sorry. Stuff needs to happen now, right? So what do you guys feel like is the proper way? And I'm going to push it back to Diesel over here, because they're going through this process now, of trying to push back and say, this is what needs to happen. And so I'm going to toss it to him, and then I'm going to toss it back at the two of you all, anybody else, where what do you think is the proper way? Do you disagree with the looting? I know that in the 60s, it was because of the looting. It was because of the response that we had from our leaders being killed that brought us the Civil Rights Act. It pushed people into action. So what do you think is, and another thing, stuff doesn't get as much press unless stuff like this happens. So Like, what do you think?
Right. I must say that I have loved every perspective that has been brought to this conversation tonight. And there are a lot of parallels that exist between, the situation happening in Nigeria and some of the situation happening in the US. Bill, you made a comment about how, the police officer in the US is, working to do overtime just so he can earn some extra bucks. And in Nigeria, it's something similar, where it's like the average police officer earns what? On a good day, $200 a month, right? A month to feed himself and his family, to send them to school, and that $200 on a good day. Sometimes it's about what, maybe $150. Now you see this police unit SARS that was created. A lot of people are used to. Somebody also mentioned something about like the consequences, people being held accountable for when you're trying to topple, the system. People should be held accountable for the consequences of their actions, right? A police officer would walk up to you here and say, I will kill you and nothing is going to happen. Because the truth is, that is the reality of a young Nigerian who has been profiled for having a tattoo, having an iPhone, or having 2 phones, or driving a fancy car at a young age or something. Like, they have become the people that these police officers in this radical unit have now profiled. I myself have been subjected to, this level of harassment just because I sat in the back of an Uber and I was asked to give them my phone. They opened my phone, went through my pictures, went through my messages, and anything could have happened to me that night, right? Now, we're talking about the amount of money that has been put into the police force. These folks don't make enough money. Yes, we understand that. However, if you look at the policeman in the US, his reason for wanting to serve, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like there's something very patriotic about, let me commit myself to the police force just so I can render my services to the people. No, here it's just a case of, how can I make money? I'm undereducated. I think I have some brute force and maybe I'll make it in the police force, right? And then they go in there. We're talking about the training earlier. Not all these folks get the right amount of training that is needed for them to be assigned to this unit, but because they have a gun and they know that they can harass somebody and they will make some money off it and they will go scot-free, a lot of people want to be assigned to the SARS unit. A lot of people would rather work in the SARS unit where they know that they can collect bribe, they can harass people. Extortion is a normal thing, right? That night when I was stopped and they were going through my phone, God forbid they had seen the photo of a random photo of that should have not been on my phone. They would have asked me to come with them to the ATM machine, drain my account of all money. Mac, I think we were talking about how you're teaching your kids how to get pulled over, or what to do when they get pulled over. Somebody's out here teaching me that I should have 3 accounts and I should just have some amount of money that is separate from my core earning account, just in case a police officer stops me and they want to extort money from me, and I have something to go give them when they take me to the ATM, just so I don't come up missing. It's tough, right? So you see, the looting is also another systemic failure that the government, caused by themselves. Now, there's something that the politicians use here during their rallies. They bring thugs, right, just to disrupt the election and disrupt the electoral process, to seize ballot boxes, just so they can swing the votes in their favor. Now, I'm sorry if I'm painting a very horrible picture of, Nigeria, but this is the reality. Now, during this peaceful protest, you sent out these people just to go and disrupt the protesters, and you think they're not going to take advantage of what is happening? Now that went out of control. The army shows up at the peaceful protest ground, skipping all the places where the thugs were harassing protesters. Now you came to a place where peaceful protest was happening and they opened fire. People are definitely going to go into a frenzy, right? Now that resulted into looting a couple of days later. Definitely we know that it's not the protesters who were looting. It's the people who just thought to take advantage of this whole thing. And now, look, man, it's what we need to do is treat the police right here, I think, right? Go through several levels of mental evaluation, like we've also spoken about on this call, give them the right amount of training, and hold people accountable. Accountability is the thing. We've been screaming end SARS for nothing less than 7 years now, and nothing has been done. Nothing has been done. They make empty promises. And this is why at this time, the youth just boiled over and exploded, where it's like, it makes no sense. You can't say you're changing this thing and you're just going to call it another name. We're not stupid. It's 2020. People are dying every day. And so that's how I feel like we can do something here, where it's like, treat the police right and keep people accountable so they feel like they can't go scot-free.
And so it sounds familiar because I think we were having some of the same issue when we were talking about looting here in the United States, where people were in crowds and they were going into spaces and other people were taking advantage of the mayhem that was happening. And sometimes that happens to delegitimize the protests that are going on.
Sure.
So what, and again, I was just like, we have this issue in America where instead of taking responsibility, we blame the other person for doing something that we should be doing. So here we go. I'm going to toss it back out to you. What is the proper way to push back? I mean, because again, like I said, there are things that are intentionally being done. I mean, you have intentional voter oppression of young people. You have intentional voting oppression in communities that are low income. You have intentional people who are going out to intimidate people when they come to the polls. You have historical, traditional racist things that are happening, even up into the levels of the Supreme Court, where they're rolling back civil rights and voting rights that we had in this country. So again, I mean, I love how, sometimes people paint a rosy picture of voting, but these controlling powers, these capitalist powers, and it sounds like a whole bunch of conspiracy theories, quote unquote, because that's what people try to write it off to be, are stopping people from being actively engaged. So how do we push back, and what is the proper way?
I'll take a swing at this. You push back in whatever way you're empowered as a human being in order to survive, live, and thrive. I find it utterly ridiculous for us to use terms like looting and rioting in response to being hunted and captured and killed today. Like, we are stolen people on stolen land. It's impossible for me to loot and riot. Anything that happens to me as a condition of my ancestors being kidnapped and me being here and I'm not supposed to be here. So any and everything is a condition of that. So I'm not responsible for that. What I am responsible for, and what we're all responsible for, is what our individual leadership does and doesn't produce, even in response to trauma. So it's a little like, I understand that when we burn property, there's a response from a government and from an economic system, and it may work out favorably or it may work out unfavorably. I don't have judgment for people who are responding to a hyper-corrupt government, to a state-sanctioned police department that is killing people without repercussion for generations. There's nothing to discuss about what it is that we do in response to them. Nothing concedes to power but power, and we need to empower ourselves to police our own community and to de-weaponize anybody who would harm anything that's living in our neighborhood and communities. It's unacceptable to live under the authority and the thumb of an oppressive energy with all of the life that's in each and every one of us. So I think that we have given systems far too much power and devalued our ability to actually facilitate whatever it is that we want in this lifetime.
We've been marketed to that our vote is our voice. In a capitalist society, it is not. Your checkbook will beat your vote every time. And that's the game that we've been forced to play. And they put nice music to it. You know, Hillary comes with hot sauce, Jay-Z comes up, Puffy comes up, and I'm not picking on any one particular person. But because we're in that space, everything that Bill says it rings true year after year after year after year in this vicious cycle, right? The reason why the stuff in the challenges and atrocities in Nigeria was bubbling to light was because other economic entities started to see it, and people that could influence those economic entities were going, I don't want anything if it's coming out of there. All of a sudden, now it's this big thing that we have to pay attention to. When you guys have sacrificed your lives for years trying to address this issue. Ironically, Black America specifically, could stand to learn from what's happening in Nigeria and what just occurred. What's the economic power behind us? Because it is not the teddy bears on the pole. It's not the marches. You can tear up the Foot Lockers and the Snipes and whatever. It's until you put the money behind it and say, I will match it's our machine against your machine. And we're going to go toe for toe, dollar for dollar. Then that makes a difference, because other than that, you get, and I'll just pose this, Alex. An elected official right now who's dealing with these tragedies that are occurring on our streets. If it's between us and our pain and what the PACs that donate to their accounts say, they're going to say to us, they're going to put their arms around us. They're going to say, I'm here for you. They're going to have Janice Armstrong do a story and put you in the newspaper really quickly. And then they're going to go back over to the very store owner who cut them a check and maxed them out at 11.9 for city council and say, I need more cops around my store because they just looted me. And guess what? More cops will be there. Why? Because we haven't given that city council person or whoever the choice that says, if you don't choose our money, we're going to burn the whole thing down. We're going to move you out of your seat.
It sounds, and again, and I'm sorry to be the Debbie Downer. It sounds wonderful where you're saying that we push our money behind stuff, but who do we push our money behind? I mean, you're talking about people who are usually living from paycheck to paycheck. In Philadelphia is the largest, poorest city in the United States. And you're talking about pulling money together for people who are living day by day, right? When I was working in a detention center in Washington, D.C., because that was my first teaching job, you would ask the young people there, it's like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And they had never thought that far because they were just trying to make sure that they would survive to the next day. So you're talking about people who don't necessarily see themselves in the future like we have the privilege to do, because we have stable incomes and homes that we can go home to on a regular basis. So again, I ask you, as a person that is on the street, who probably knew Mr. Wallace here, and who probably was locked up with him, or who probably knew somebody that was around him that did some stuff way back when, and who know how they treat people in the system. How do they make their voices heard? Because at the end of the day, ain't nobody out here paying money and stuff. And you cannot ask me to pay money to any one of these city council members or one of these people that are out here running by the establishment. You can't ask me to donate to no PAC or anything of that nature.
You described me. I am that individual who spent 6.5 years in prison. I actually do. I am one relationship away from the young boy, right? But now I'm 50. I was 20. I was 23 when I made decisions that sent me to prisons. I spent 6.5 years and I came home at 30. Two things I want to talk about. Malik is not just saying that we have money to spend. He's indicating that we have economic capital to leverage. Right. One of the things that we can do is bring a general strike to this country. General strikes happen in France, and as a direct result, they do have a social system, so to speak. But that is because that is what the majority of the people actually wanted, but they only expressed it because they refuse to go to work when government doesn't work for them. And the whole damn country shuts down. So plan your vacations very carefully if you go to France, because all the restaurants may be closed because of the manner in which someone who works in a restaurant in that country had been treated.
Yep. And
so economic capital for small groups or for Black and brown groups or for marginalized groups, just to spend their money together and leverage it together. And then in regards to the next point, I forgot what it is, so I'll pass to someone else.
So let me tag on to that.
Hold on a second, because I want to give space to Buki real quick, because I mean I'm sure she has some response to some of this, and then we'll toss it to because I mean sometimes, and I'm going to say this too, because sometimes I'm very strongly opinionated, and then what I'll do is well, go ahead, Buki. Let me hear what you got to say, man. I mean, I'm here. Let me hear what you have to say, Buki.
Yeah, I want to address 2 or 3 issues, and I'll make it as quickly as possible. I want to address the issue of doing right by the police force in Nigeria and increasing their wages. And I want to break it to you, Biodun, that the police force, at least from what I see here where I live, is when it comes to education, they're not any better educated. They can go straight into the police academy with a high school diploma, maybe not even. So that's one. And then a buzzword that they both have in common is greed. They can never, ever have enough. And the police force in the US is the example of how you can never pay a man enough money to just do his damn job. The truth is, folks that become police officers, both in Nigeria and both in the US, do have something in common. They want power. And that absolute power intoxicates, where people have the license to kill. That is the worst drug ever. The thought that somebody can take another person's life and the DA will support that person, or the system, like in Nigeria, would just turn a blind eye. The issue is not with the lower level people, like I like to say. The issue is with the higher ups. And the comment about having the money and the capital and the economic, strength to be able to do stuff or put money behind stuff. Nigeria is the 6th country in the world to produce oil. I was one of the privileged Nigerians who lived a middle-class life in the 80s and the 90s. This is not given to everyone. Nigeria does have the financial capital, but the buzzword is greed. And the same thing is happening here in the US. The only difference is people are much more slick. And they try to act like there's some kind of democracy when that doesn't even exist. It's just the glass ceiling effect. That's what the US is going through. And that's what I wanted to add.
Yeah, I saw it burning in your eyes, and I just was like, let me go ahead and let her let that go. Go ahead, Malik. I'm sorry, man. I didn't mean to cut you off.
I think that's great. One of the things I want to touch on a couple of things. So Alex, when you talked about, hey, we've had this privilege to be able to come into some level of understanding because we had stability. What most people don't know, unless they Google pretty deep with me, I was homeless. So you just never really know, like, based on whatever the current profile is, there's a story for all of us. And one of the things that I noticed and learned, and was fortunate enough because people were sharing the information. And that's what I love about what you're doing tonight, Alex, is making sure that the information gets out. Our people are destroyed for the lack of knowledge, right? We lose in this game because we don't know how to move the chess pieces. I'm moving a rook in the night like it's a checker piece, and wondering why I keep getting penalized. Oh, the OFA system, Organizing for America. Do you know when that was funded during that year that it was created? Do you know the breakdown of the amounts of money that it raised? $600 million off of $5 donations or less. $600 million from somebody just taking Starbucks money or Frito-Lay's chips or a hug in a shorty hoagie and putting that towards a particular thing. So I say that to say there's enough. If Bill said, hey, this is the movement that we have, I have an agenda. No different than Ice Cube with his contract for Black America or anything else. We sat and said, we're putting just $5 behind it and did it. It would move. And so if we could elect the president with $600 million off of $5 donations or less coming from the people, I know that we can at least shake up Philadelphia City Council. I know that you could be a city council person, Alex, if we put the bread together and said we're changing it and we want somebody in there that's going to do it. It's just the commitment of the people and getting the people to understand that the game is no longer emotional. It's now business. Because if I go to a restaurant and a restaurant says, we'll give you food, but it's going to be free, that also means that my ability to demand from it, my expectations is different because it was free. But the moment I say I paid $20 for this plate, for this steak to be cooked medium rare with some asparagus and some, mashed potatoes or whatever it is, I now can say, I'm going to pull that money back, or I'm going to demand for that plate to come correct. Unfortunately, we've been on the free side with our emotion and our vote, asking for the steak to be done correct, and it just hasn't.
Man.
So I think that this is what I think that this leaves us a really good space to kind of talk about where we could invest our money and put our money where our mouth is. And so we have gone over the hour, and I know that all of us are. I mean, I know I got homework I got to do because I'm about to graduate in December. Freaking God.
Congrats.
Thank you. So I'm gonna go ahead and give y'all a chance to leave because it sounds like leave everybody with a positive word. Tell them what they can do to organize or get behind the things that you are all trying to do, and how they can follow you on social media to follow all of the great work that all of you all are doing. All right. So we'll be gentlemen, and we'll go ahead and let Ms. Buki go first. And then we'll just go, and y'all can just jump in and take your turn for each one of you. All right. So Ms. Buki, what is your good word to leave with the people? What organizations should people be looking at to donate to organize, and how can they follow your work?
Yeah, I'll start with the last question first. So you can, with the Racial Justice Coalition of San Diego. It is a racial justice organization, and it's tailored around the advocacy and policy change for Black and Brown folks in San Diego. Our webpage is rjcsd.org, and we're also on Instagram under Racial Justice Coalition of San Diego, and on Facebook as well. We have our support buttons under Venmo and PayPal. We are a self-funded organization with over 20 organizations, local organizations on board. And the best word that I can leave you with this evening is not to think your vote doesn't matter, not to think this does not concern you because you're not Black or Brown, and to feel addressed, and do not wait for it to be you to get involved with, especially grassroots campaigns, because the grassroots campaigns, that's what really makes the difference in our local communities, because that's what hits us first before the federal. That's what I want to leave you with.
Thank you, Buki. And let me just say this. This issue is something that's really important to me within Nigeria. So I think I'm going to hook up with some of my other Nigerian friends. We're going to have a special edition to this show to really kind of get down to the nitty gritty of what's happening in Nigeria. And I have a couple other friends in Africa that were a part of the Mandela Fellowship that came over here when I was a part of the Victory Fund that I might want to try to bring into some of this conversation. So we're going to have a larger conversation around the whole African and Nigerian specifically experience. Okay. So I'll you know what I'll do? I'll just go along with the line that's on my screen. I'll go to you, Malik, next. What is a good word that you want to leave with these people? What organizations can they donate to, and how do they follow the work that you're doing?
So I'll follow Buki's version and go backwards all the way up. I have a show, Heart City TV. Please follow it on YouTube. We go to the Now Network next Tuesday, 56 million subscribers. We'll be on the Intellistat Network. So for those in Africa, you guys can follow it as well. And we give varied viewpoints, so tomorrow we'll have, or Wednesday, we'll have Carol Mosley Braun on, and we'll have Paris Denard. We want everybody to have, access to information and be able to make a choice. In terms of programs to support, they should support you, Alex. They should get behind, this program, donate to Alex and what he's doing, and being able to bring multiple voices to the table, multiple stories and perspective. Black media is under attack. And we're losing the ability to tell our narrative the right way. We're losing our ability to pump up programs and organizations like the ones everybody else has. The one thing that I would leave with you is, in a capitalist society, if you don't do business, you get the business. Make your choice.
Bill.
Yeah. Anybody who wants to get in touch with me for business, LinkedIn is be the best vehicle. I'm not really active on Facebook and other platforms to that degree for business. Yeah, I would just say, the thing that I'm doing at this moment is making sure that I'm healing. I'm 50 years old and I grew up under white supremacy. I'm here. I'm thriving. My responsibility is to myself, to treat myself better than anyone else can, to love myself, to love everyone else, to love the planet, and then to let that, to bring that energy to groups of other individuals who are amazing and who are incredible and who are working very hard to make the world a better place as well. And in terms of what to support, thank you for that, Malik. Absolutely. Alex, thank you for the invitation, brother. This is how I actually found out about this. So really dope. And folks should actually advertise and folks should send you some bread. And I'm going to do so too, because you asked what we can do. I was looking at my Act Blue. I've probably given $5 to over 200 candidates over the past 2 years. It's just $5, but I always lend my voice. I lend my expertise, and everyone's deserving of my love. So I always have that to give for anyone.
Thank you.
Peace and love,
B Diesel.
Yes, sir. For anybody who wants to get in touch with me, B Diesel is the handle on Instagram. I feel like that's the platform that is very quick for me to engage. So that'll be BEEDIESIEL. I'm very active on Instagram. With regard to platforms, y'all, thank you so much for shouting out Alex. Alex, thank you for doing this. I remember when you talked to me about, setting this up, and I just thought it was a great platform for people to have very honest, truly vulnerable conversations in a very safe space. Thank you so much for doing this. I'd also like people to use their platform to keep advocating for an end to police brutality. And a lot of innocent young Nigerian businesses. The truth is, a lot of people say that the youth of Nigeria survive, in spite of the government. Like, there's not a handful of people that can point to a lot of things that the government has done. And so we're literally it's like there's a huge disconnect, right? The government is over there and the people is just over there. So a lot of young businesses that are keeping the ecosystem going and giving the youth like safe havens to exist were affected in the last couple of weeks. And I feel like anybody who is able to donate to any small business in Nigeria, especially in the city of Lagos, would be doing some great deal of good. As for final words, the world is a very small place, and in the same way that I have crossed paths with everybody on this call today, I think it's important for us to be kind to ourselves and to be kind to one another.
Matt?
After sitting in here with these giants, it's very hard for me to come up with some words because you guys have been great tonight. So let me say this. One, Alex, thank you for this platform you had. And you're right. I agree with Malik. We need to support you because I know what you're passionate about. I see it. I had the opportunity of working with you on a daily basis. So I know how passionate you are to get the mission done. So if somebody wants to support me, support Alex. And because as I'm thinking about this, as Bill said, I'm like, I done did a whole bunch of those $5. I done sent money down to Kentucky. I done sent money down to South Carolina, but that's a whole nother story. But my hope for people is, and I want to talk to the Black and brown people right now. I want you to know that you are somebody. No matter what your past was, what you've been through, you can use that to get a seat at the table. So if you don't know how to get to that point where you can have an extra $5, then you need to be reaching out to somebody that can, one, educate you on credit, show you how to use the community college to change your circumstances, and use the career link to get you a job. That's what I want to see. I want to see everybody have access to fair housing, to be able to have a place to put their head. You know, and it can all happen with some form of education. Yeah. I don't care if you got a doctorate degree, you need to be educated in some other forms, because it's important to know what the struggle is. So once again, peace and love to all of y'all. Thank y'all for the amazing work you're doing. Thank you for the education class tonight, you know, and most importantly, everyone, please be safe, because there's 2 pandemics out there right now for Black and brown people, COVID-19 and police brutality. And that's something it's just a fact. I'm not saying that all cops are bad. What I'm saying is that right now we being targeted, and we have to slow that down. So let's unite. Let's continue to lift one another up. Let's educate one another, and let's move. Let's change the tables we sit at.
All right, thank y'all. I mean, I'm definitely inspired. I think that this was a great platform. I wish we had more time, because I feel like there was more that was coming out of this. I will definitely reach out to you all to invite you back on the show for various topics. I know for like the next 2 weeks, I'm gonna have to do on politics and stuff, and I know I make people angry with the stuff that I say, but I can give two. You can stop following me. But yeah, thank y'all so much. I would definitely be reaching out to y'all. I'm gonna give my little closing statements, and I will definitely connect with you all again. Thank y'all. Thank y'all. Thank y'all. Much love to every last one of you. All right. So, whew, that was a lot. I just want to say that, you know, it's conversations like these that make me feel wonderful as a person. I just kind of want to piggyback on something that was said tonight. A lot of times people, specifically who are out there trying to be on their grind and stuff like that, struggle with asking for help. You know, we are in a time that is unprecedented. I mean, we have a president that's not really doing what he's supposed to be doing. I mean, we're being bombarded with get out there and vote. We have people dying on a daily basis. The pandemic is rebounding. It's just so many, and we're about to move into holiday seasons, and we can't forget that people really go through serious mental health issues during these holidays, because a lot of families are broken. And specifically when you have lost a lot of family members, and you're having to go through a holiday season where they are gone for the first time. This time is where a lot of people may go into or slip into spaces of depression. Please check on your friends. Please be kind to yourself. Please ask for help if you need it. I mean, you're never by yourself. There's always somebody out there. I grieve with the Wallace family. I'm praying that justice is served this time. I am praying for the people in Nigeria. There are so many things happening in this world right now. And we just got to be aware and vigilant. All right. Be kind to people. Please don't forget to ask for help. As always, you can find my show on Talks with Alex in YouTube. You can find me on Instagram, j.alex.deering. You can find me on Facebook. You can like my public page, or you can follow me on my personal page. Just know on either one of those platforms that I'm going to say what I say, and I said what I said, and that's how I feel. And then, yeah, follow the show. It's every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Feel free to do that. And I will definitely see you all next Tuesday at 8 p.m. All right. Bye.